All right, Vortex Nation, I'm very excited to kick this one off now for a couple of reasons. One, we're going to talk about pistols, which we've talked a lot about rifles in the past, and now we're going to talk about pistols specifically. We're going to be talking about red dots. I think red dots are awesome. I'm also super stoked because one of our guests is new to the podcast, not new to Vortex, but new to the podcast. It is Mike. He's sitting across the table from me. And just wait. Don't say anything just yet, Mike, because I want to amp this up a little bit. Mike has quite possibly the greatest voice for podcasts ever. So if you're planning to listen to this today, actually, you might even want to wait and just till you're about ready to go to bed and let the smooth, buttery tones of Mike Love put you to sleep.
Just Mike Love sounds good.
Yeah.
When I say it.
Mike Love, you could be a radio DJ.
I can't even live up to the hype you guys are giving me right now.
We do have...
We might even get a lot more female listeners, Jim.
We might. You could be that ticket in.
One never knows.
Man, he does have the best radio voice.
It's so true.
Mike might end up with a few female visitors after this.
Exactly. The more raspy, nasally voice on the mic now is Jimmy, and then we have Mark next to me as usual, and Adam Maxwell is here too. Adam's been on the podcast a couple of times, and he's brought a number of really cool toys to talk about. But naturally, when we bring a new guest to the podcast on, we got to let him introduce himself. So, Mike, take it away. What do you do here at Vortex? And then what are some fun facts about yourself, too, for the listeners to get to know you?
So I've been with Vortex since last fall. I work down at the range. I'm a range safety officer and firearms instructor, and it's an incredible position to be in. The range we have is amazing. It's such a great tool for the engineering department and the customer support people to be able to use. It just makes a world of difference in their jobs being simpler to do and being more effective in what they do. So I'm honored to be a part of Vortex. It's exciting to be a part of this very great company. As far as what do I do that's interesting, I'm a pretty boring person, but one thing I do like to do is...
That's not true, Mike. The most interesting man in the world in real life.
Got the most interesting resume of any of us, too.
Yeah, he did. We were like Taekwondo and... shoot, I'm introducing people.
No, that's okay. One of the things I really like to do is fly, and my favorite thing to do when I fly is to fly upside down. So I've been flying since I was about 15 years old, saved all my money as a kid, started learning how to fly, started flying upside down when I was 16 years old, and just have enjoyed that ever since.
And what kind of planes do you fly?
I've flown, actually I went through my logbooks a few nights ago just because I was curious. I've flown 69 different models of aircraft over the years. Everything from J3 Cubs to Cessna Citations. And I've flown all kinds of different aerobatic airplanes. A Pitts Special, which is a very, very aerobatic biplane. Used to fly that a lot back in the 90s. Own a Russian military airplane called a Yak-52. It's built like a tank. It's good for +7 and -5 Gs. It's just a lot of fun to fly.
Wow.
So, yeah, good times.
Well, I guess you got to be training people for the old MiG over there. So
Exactly.
But it's a prop plane, right?
It is. It's a propeller airplane. The instrument panel is actually set up like a Russian jet, so all of the original Russian instruments are in it. And it literally is the same panel that is in the L-39, and then you step into the MiG or Sukhoi you're going to fly. What the Russians have done is just keep commonality between all of those instrument panels. And it's a great airplane, a lot of fun. Sounds like a Harley on steroids when it's running, and it's just makes a really great sound.
So it's stout, and it performs well, very durable, it sounds like, and reliable. So basically they made the AK-47 planes.
They did.
I was going to say the Vortex Razor of airplanes.
Fair. That's also right.
I think that's very applicable.
Man, that is cool.
Where did you procure this plane? What's its...
So its history is back in 2005, I decided I need another airplane. And so went through, and this airplane there's about 250 of them and the Chinese equivalent, the Nanchang, in the United States. And it's flown by a lot of ex-military pilots, a lot of formation stuff, things like that. And so they're just a unique airplane, very cool looking. There was a guy down in Alabama who was a broker for him, gave him half the money for the airplane. He sent that to wherever he did in Russia, and an airplane came across the border and went to Vilnius, Lithuania. Spent about 2 years in a rebuild facility, and literally they took the airplane down to complete bare bones and rebuilt everything on it. So they shipped it over in a shipping container. It arrived in January of 2008 down in Alabama. They put the wings and the tail and everything on it. I went down there and flew it, pulled a bunch of G's, nothing big came off. So I'm like, all right, we got an airplane that's going to work.
There you have it. Wow, that is super cool. It's a cool airplane, like you said, to look at, and it's very classy. So before we turn this into a podcast about airplanes, though, let's as though maybe
I wouldn't be against it.
I was just gonna say maybe that's if listeners out there, if you want to hear just a cool podcast about airplanes with Mike, let us know. We can make that happen. But right now, we're going to talk about pistols on dots. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Or dots on pistols.
Cool. Man, yeah, or dots. Did I say pistols on dots
You
again?
did.
Dang it. I keep saying that. Dots on pistols. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. I feel like the total killjoy because everybody's probably super into that. Now I just like, meh. But guns are cool too. So what's the deal with dots on pistols? Why are people doing it? Where did this, can we start first with where this started? People putting red dots on pistols.
Ooh, okay. I got that one. Basically, we have a technology red dot that was essentially a red dot is a reflection of a diode that emits a red light, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shine it at a screen and it reflects, and that's what we see. What that brought to the sight world was something that you didn't necessarily have to line up or be perfectly behind to have it represent where the gun was pointed.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's a very gross generalization.
You kind of got into the gist of parallax free, right?
Right.
That's kind of what you're describing.
Yep. And then, much like cell phones, we took them from being like a thing you had to carry on your back to something that is getting exponentially smaller. And then eventually someday we'll like give them apps so that they do other things besides be a sight. But we kind of got to the point where they were small enough that someone got the idea they could put it on a pistol.
Okay.
And then as they put them onto pistols, we found the unique application or the unique requirements of a red dot for being on a pistol, and that's kind of set for the hard right turn into developing red dots specifically for pistol applications.
Was it kind of born out, like, was it competitors that were doing it where they're kind of like, hey, this can make me super racy fast, or was it just kind of like hobbyists who were like, oh, I'm going to see if I can jerry rig, JB weld, like
I would say
get all kind of crazy with this and slap one on?
My perception of it, I wasn't there, but my perception of it was that when pistol competition became really popular, when practical pistol competition, so running around shooting at targets for speed, became popular, one of the key divisions at the time was open division, and a division where there are no restrictions. So there's the divisions where we have to put rules on things so everything's fair, and there's people who don't want to conform, they just put them all into open. And so when there was an open division and there was an optical sight that became applicable to it, that's where it became a must-have, and then the technologies evolved to the point where they're getting better and better and better. They last longer, they're more precise, they have longer run times, things like that, more durable.
Cool. And so it seems like now, so if you're watching on YouTube, again, as usual, you can kind of see a lot of these visual aids we've brought. So now the general sense of things is that we've landed on this open top style red dot sight that you see on a lot of pistol slides, and some other mounting applications. There seems to be about a gazillion and one ways to put a red dot on a pistol nowadays.
Yeah.
I don't think that there hasn't been a standard developed yet as far as how to put a dot on a pistol. Like you have AR-15s with iron sights. There's a very standard AR-15 iron sight height, and then that's how you get your rifle red dots. You have your absolute co-witness, your lower 1/3 co-witness. Now some people are busting out to be super cool and putting it 2-inch height, all that stuff. But you kind of have a standard to go against.
Yep.
As well as a lot of other parts that go on firearms and in firearms are used with them. There's a standard, but optics on pistols, it's kind of the Wild West right now.
It is very Wild Westy right now.
And what's the deal with that? Kind of what's the thought process behind all these different kinds? We have some in front of me right now that are custom milled into a slide. We have some in front of us now that use plate systems, some that are actually mounted to the frame of the gun.
I think that's a byproduct of how fast the technology is evolving. So form factor on them is changing so fast that the industry hasn't standardized on anything yet. and then they also applications are changing too. So as the technology became more viable for tactical applications, which is what I think Mike and I can both talk to. West Coast police departments have, one in particular has told us they've looked at red dot technology 3 times for handguns over the last 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And every time they looked at them, they said the technology wasn't ready yet. So when they had really big, they were the size of, when a red dot was the size of a Swiss Army knife, they're like, well, it's not ready for the street yet. We'll come back later. And when they came back later, like, oh, well, yeah, that's cool. Still not ready. Right now, they're in the 3rd iteration of looking at it. And they're like, all right, well, it might be ready now. So I think as that application has come closer into a mainstream, or at least certainly a higher volume market, that's where a lot of these other systems have come from, is the plate systems and adaptations to existing pistols, making pistols specifically for it. All that's kind of come out of, well, now it's in a form factor where it's actually applicable to more mainstream applications, whereas before it was very competition specific.
Yeah.
It seems like it'd be a little bit almost tricky for manufacturers of optics and pistols. Like you said, it's kind of this Wild West. There's no set standard. Like, people are trying to make stuff that's going to be, compatible. But I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, it becomes quite complicated. We get, I would say, I shouldn't say like most of the questions that we get a wide variety of questions having different optics and so many different applications. But a huge number of questions that we get from people is just, hey, I want to put an optic on this pistol. How do I do it? A lot of times we give them the answer of like, that's like asking somebody how to put a basketball in the hoop. It's like, well, you can do it this way, you can do it that way, layup, jump shot, fade away. I mean,
Well, I think the one thing is, if you look at ARs, there's a mil standard for it, so everybody knows how the Picatinny rail is going to be set up. It's easy to make mounts for the rifle,
right.
but there's no standard for pistols on how those are going to work. And I think from a police standpoint, which is my background, the agencies won't let you usually go out and mill a slide because now you're modifying something significantly. So for a lot of police departments, until the technology got to the point like with the Gen 5 Glocks where you've got the plate system and you can mount specific dots on a specific plate and it's set up really nice, that was kind of one of the holdbacks for departments because they don't want officers going out and modifying the slides because they don't know about reliability, any of the rest of that. But now the manufacturers have kind of said, okay, we're going to offer these things so that it does become more mainstream for police, for military, those types of things without having to jump through hoops of modifying all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like you said, I've chatted with you in the past about this. Part of the reason why, one of the main reasons why you're on this podcast too, to speak to it. You began using a red dot in your career prior to Vortex, right?
Correct.
And you noticed a number of different advantages that you felt you gained over iron sights. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I ran a Glock 17. That was my duty handgun, and started out with irons just like everybody else. As my eyes have gotten older, I can still see distance quite well, but seeing up close, things became fuzzier. So the front and rear sights, getting those aligned the way that you want to have nice groups, that became harder and harder. I became part of a pilot group for my department and basically ran a Viper red dot on my Glock 17 on the street. And what I found is, number one, I didn't have to worry about lining up sights anymore. It immediately took that part out of the equation. The other part is it's parallax free. So when I was pointing at a target, there was none of the fuzziness that I had run into in the past with the front and rear sights lining up. And so that really was a game changer for me. When I started running the Viper red dot, I could hit steel silhouettes at 100 yards with my handgun. And prior to that, that was a very challenging thing. It was more luck than skill to do that with irons. So that really made a huge difference in how well I was able to shoot with that handgun. The other part is, when you're on a call and you're in a tense situation, it's much easier to keep both eyes open with a red dot than it is with the iron sights. And so it allowed you much greater peripheral vision wherever you were working. That was a huge benefit from it. And then I didn't have to, if I was in a tense situation, the brain power that I had that I would use making sure my sights were lined up, I could use those. That that thought process to hopefully de-escalate the situation so that it was the best possible resolution for everybody on that. So from my perspective, having a red dot made me more accurate, made me more situationally aware because I could have a much bigger field of view, and it gave me opportunity to de-escalate things because I wasn't as worried about are my sights lined up on things. So it was a great game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, you talk about the thought process necessary or the thought capacity necessary to go through lining up your iron sights and making an accurate shot if necessary with iron sights and versus a red dot. You know, and I think of when you watch classes or you see people practice shooting pistols a lot, you know, when you're talking about the fundamentals, you hear that front sight, front sight, front sight, front sight. How many times have you like watched a video or whatever where people are saying that? And it's because you have to concentrate quite a bit. Whereas with a red dot, now I'm not saying you can just, you know, willy-nilly pull a red dot up and just kind of like, oh wow, it just magically goes into the spot that you wanted it to.
Yeah, you can make a sandwich while you're, you know.
Yeah. But that red dot, that's it, which I think also trips some people up. There's a lot of people, they get a red dot for their pistol. Maybe they got a Glock MOS or something like that where they, you know, okay, cool, I have these plates, there's these screws, I just got a red dot, plop, there it goes. They get a little confused because they want to line something up, you know?
Yeah.
It's like,
Oh, right.
it's a pistol. I have to line things up, right? There's irons, right? And then now I can actually kind of see these irons through the red dot too, but there's a dot there. Do I line them up? You know, do I beep? I don't get it. But it's actually quite simple.
It
Put
is.
the dot on the thing and pull the thing.
And when we have dealers come down to learn about the products, the Vortex products, one of the things we always put them on are the red dots because there is that misconception, I need to line up the red dot with the front sight or the front and rear sight, and it's not co-witnessed, and it's not intended to be co-witnessed. So the big thing is get that dot out there so that you can see it, and that's where your bullet's going to hit. That's the simplicity of it.
And then, I mean, you know, I guess you don't have to concentrate on lining things up, but I'd imagine, I guess this is a question, between presenting your pistol with irons or presenting your pistol with a dot, do you have to be more consistent with one or the other?
No, because the end point is the same, right? You have to present the pistol to the same place. I think when we equate being good with iron sights or being able to line up iron sights really fast and then maybe perhaps not being able to line up a red dot fast, I think that's somewhat synonymous with like saying you're really good at bumper bowling.
Which I am.
Because when you're when you're presenting iron sights and you're lining things up, you also have a reference point. Like you can start to see the things and put them together as you're bringing the pistol up. Whereas a red dot, you either see it or you don't.
True.
So you either brought it up to the right spot or you didn't.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, well, it's because you didn't bring it to the right spot. Now that's hard to talk someone into, but essentially, you know, it's like bumper bowling. It's like, yeah, I can bowl 300 with bumpers up, but if there's a gutter there, well then, you know, there's a chance that I'm not going to hit some pins. So it's kind of the same thing in that you have to present it to the right place. It's just you don't have the same visual clues that you had with iron sights.
Right. This is one thing I see all the time when we go to shows and you have a little tiny micro red dot like this that's sitting out, sometimes not on a firearm. People try hand holding it, right?
Yes.
And they go up and they go, oh, okay, cool, red dot. These are pretty fast, right? They try holding up and they're like, I can't see anything. It's not working. It's not on. And you're like, okay, well then you grab it and you kind of look at it and you're like, no, it's on. It's working. They're like, no, I can't see anything. And like you said, it's because with a red dot, it's like once you're in the red dot sweet spot, oh man, that's a sweet spot to be because you can see that dot. You don't have to be perfectly behind it. Wherever the dot's pointing is where, if you've sighted it in properly, where the end of the barrel is pointing. But yeah, because of the nature of it being a reflection, you know, when you look at a mirror in your hallway, there's times where you can be looking at a mirror and you don't see your reflection or you don't see the reflection of something else. But until you move your location in relativity to that mirror, then other things present themselves and can be seen. It's just like that. The reflection, like Adam said earlier, of that LED dot. Some people think that a light is kind of magically being shot out and then reflected back to their eye, and it's kind of like this. It's like a magical thing. I don't even know. But literally, when you look at the glass, it's like you're looking at a mirror, and you see that little red dot. It's actually it's actually just you're seeing a reflection of a tiny little red light down there.
Yep.
You know, and that's what it is. And so you have to get lined up properly in order to see it. And when it's there, then you're good to go. But yeah, that is one thing that you run into a lot.
Yeah.
Especially in handheld things, pistols are handheld, obviously, and so it can be a little bit more difficult. When it's on a rifle and, you know, they've all been designed, the mounting systems have been designed, and everything is a little bit more steady, it's easy to just bring that rifle up and be right in the sweet spot right away.
Right. And like when it's mounted on a pistol, you have more of a reference as to where it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're like when when I was in retail, yeah, that was the thing is like, how do I look through it? I always had to tell people like, roll it way down, like roll your wrist way forward and then come back. Because if you just hold it up and try to find it, you're never going to rotate it forward enough.
Right.
Gotcha.
So it was always like, look at the back of it and then roll it back, and then you'll see it. So, like, once you have it mounted on a pistol, it's like, okay, I know how a pistol is supposed to present. You can get much closer, much faster because you have an idea of where you're supposed to be.
It is pretty natural. I've found that if you're really used to irons, usually what happens is because the red dot sits up a little higher, you almost always bring the pistol up too high.
Also, yes.
And then you got to kind of like, oh, wait, bring it down just a smidge, and then there it is.
Yep. Or guys, they have them rolled back a little bit. Like they're holding it in their hand like they have to roll the pistol forward.
Yeah.
With it being parallax free, are there any advantages if you get kind of caught having to shoot from like a compromised position where maybe you might not have the best form?
Well, one of the beauties of a red dot is if you can see the red dot in the window, even if it's over against the far edges or the upper or lower portions of it, where that dot is where the round's going to hit. So we talk about, front and rear sight alignment. If you see that dot anywhere in the window and it's on your target, you're going to be okay.
So for that,
I would say
with
that is the
being said,
advantage.
compromised position. You don't have to all of a sudden try and make a compromised position an uncompromised position. It can just stay uncompromised, and you can be fast. We talked, so we'll go into certainly probably some more things, but I want to almost backtrack here a little bit. Somebody comes in and they say, I want to put a red dot on my pistol. Now, we've already kind of alluded to the fact that there's a gazillion and one ways to do that. But what's for you guys? So, like Adam, Mike, I ask you guys this: what's your general triage or like tree to go through with somebody to figure out how they're going to want to do this? Like, okay, you're getting into putting an optic on your pistol. How are we going to go down this road?
It's kind of like that phrase of like, well, you can have it good, fast, and cheap, but you can only have two of them. Like,
okay,
there's cheap ways to put them on there. There's pretty good ways to put them on. There's really fast ways to put them on there. I would say the one that traditionally they've been frame mounted, so they put some sort of.
Is that kind of like the OG, like
that's
the original
OG,
way to do
yeah.
it? So frame mounted.
So they would take something and they would mount a bracket basically to the side of the frame that doesn't move, so the part of the pistol that doesn't move, and then mount the optic to the top of that.
Yeah. So in this case, you're holding a 2011 for those just listening.
So a 2011 race style pistol. That was kind of the original way to do it. Not terribly practical for anything outside the world of IPSC, just because it's so big.
Now, it is pretty slick. Or tell me this, because I actually haven't used a frame-mounted dot. But the one thing is, like you mentioned, a lot of people, I guess, if you go on Instagram and you're seeing all the Gucci Glocks out there, a lot of them are custom-milled slides with a red dot on the slide. You don't see the frame-mounted options as much unless you follow competition shooters or competition shooting. And so like you said, it doesn't move. So the way that it's mounted, it's on kind of like a bridge over the entire slide assembly.
Yep.
And so does that help you when you're shooting? And with the fact that the red dot isn't moving, does it make like follow-up shots or maintaining a steady view of that red dot easier? Or do things happen so quickly it doesn't make a difference?
I would say, I'm going to upset a bunch of people. I would say it's kind of irrelevant. I think this system is dying. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of world champions who use it and still use it. But you kind of ask those guys like how old their gun is. Like, oh yeah, I got it 10 years ago.
Right.
But I think this system, it doesn't aid the dot, I don't think.
It doesn't aid it.
Yeah, so it doesn't hold it any more steady. It doesn't. I think the perception of the dot of the optic itself moving back and forth and you having a harder time tracking it, I don't buy into that as much. And it does subject the dot, I think what we found is it subjects the optic itself to a lot more vibration.
Really?
Oh, interesting. I would have
Yeah.
thought
More
the opposite.
vibration than being
This-
on an extremely fast-moving slide,
Right.
slamming backward and
Right,
forward.
because when you ignite a cartridge, there's like a vibration that just goes through the whole. Like picture the sound wave, right? And that goes all the way through the pistol.
Hold on,
that
I need
goes,
to hear it again to picture it. Could you do that? Okay, got it. Got the picture.
Oh, put that one on the button board. But anyway, all that vibration goes all the way up the frame mount, or to the frame, up the mount, into the optic, where very tiny things are soldered together, and they vibrate and they eventually work themselves loose. So it's harder on the dot than when it's mounted on a frame mount of a pistol. Some of that's buffered out by the motion of the slide going back and forth. So we have a spring absorbing recoil going rearward. We have a cartridge absorbing some of that energy going forward as it's stripped off the magazine, and it locks into place more slowly because all these parts are sliding into place. Whereas on a frame mount, it's just it's hardwired into whatever that vibration is. And some of them are good. Some of them vibrate quite a bit.
Okay.
So that was a rabbit hole on frame mounts.
Well, rabbit holes are good on this podcast.
That's kind of the one. It's its own thing. We can kind of put it in a separate category. Doesn't apply to most applications.
Would you say that is what 3 of those good, fast, and cheap things would you say that the frame mount is?
Ooh.
Or
Well,
is
I'd
it
say
in
it's
its own
fast. Well,
category?
it's one of the fast ones because usually
Okay.
you can modify the pistol in some way to get it on there.
Yeah, it's a little bit less.
There are similar apparatus that like go right on the Picatinny rail.
It
on
doesn't
the-
always
on the pistol.
require like CNC machines.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Whereas when we get into, well, I guess we could go down. So the fastest way to get on most pistols. So most people, they have this gun and they want to put this dot on it.
Mm-hmm.
The fastest way to do that and the most economical way to do that is to buy an adapter, a dovetail mount adapter.
Oh, so you're replacing your rear sight.
Yep. So we drift out the rear sight. There's a notch cut for that rear sight, and we're going to slide in a piece into that dovetail that's then going to accommodate the dot.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to lose some for tactical applications. A lot of guys are going to lose their rear sight in that option, so they're not going to have the co-witness ability. Those sights also are mounts are of varying quality depending who makes them.
Okay.
Like how dimensionally correct they are, and then they also again tend to vibrate a lot because this thing kind of has a hinge point.
It's kind of like a diving board.
Yeah, it's exactly like a diving board. Thank you. But that's the way for most people who have this gun, especially if this gun costs you less than $1,000. If people have this gun and they want to put a dot on it, there's generally a plate made or an adapter plate that's made for it.
Yeah. Now, Mike, can you speak to, because you brought this up earlier, so Adam suggested the fact that if you use a dovetail mount, which is what we were just describing, one of the disadvantages is that you lose a rear sight. Now, earlier you were explaining the fact that actually you don't want to worry so much about your iron sights when you're using a red dot. But why would you still maybe want to have them there?
Well,
And visible, and I guess you'd probably have to have it at a certain height, right? Can you explain that?
sure. So the reason you want them there, especially like in a tactical application, but I would also imagine in the competition world, if your dot goes out, you want to have iron sights available as a backup for that situation, just losing the sight. There are plates like the one I ran on my Glock 17 was exactly that, pushed out the rear sight, slid in the plate, and then bolted the Viper down to it. It had rear sight and front sight that were milled into the plate that were high enough that they were available as a backup. So it worked out very well. They didn't co-witness, which was the way I wanted it to be.
So they weren't like to the point where your red dot was in the middle of them.
No.
Your red dot was kind of out of.
Yep, the
out
red
of all
dot
that
sat
mess.
higher, and the irons were down lower. But if it required that I need to use those irons, they were there as a backup for me.
Okay, cool. So strictly, basically, as a backup, you'd want to have irons. And
Yes.
usually when you have a red dot, because red dots tend to sit up a little bit higher, you're not using like a standard iron sight probably. You'd end up having to use some a little higher.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
yeah. Essentially, what I've seen folks do that are running like a milled out Gen 5, something like that, where the slide is made for it, they'll put suppressor sights on it, which stand taller, and those can be the backup irons for them.
Okay.
Now this guy, like with the frame mounted model, and then we're talking about, like a Viper with a, cutout or milled out slide, one, at least to me, appears to sit, significantly higher than the other. Is there an advantage to mounting it higher or lower?
I'd say the advantage has come from, higher came out of mechanical necessity of it's just this is how tall it had to be
Right.
for it to work. And I think the evolution has been to get the dot lower.
Okay.
So that's where we talk about good or and fast and all that. And then our little analogy, as we start to get the dot lower on the pistol, we start talking about milling out the slide itself.
Yeah.
And that allows us to get it mounted much lower on the gun, more solidly, and with less bulk.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where now a lot of these millings or the now plate systems have the dot low enough that it's almost at that same height that someone's traditionally used to using an iron sight with.
Yeah.
Whereas
Okay. I see.
when someone was learning a frame mount gun, that was kind of the thing is like once you learned that, you weren't really iron sights was hard for you, or vice versa. If you're an iron sight guy and you picked up a frame mount gun, it was just weird. Whereas now when the dots are mounted so low onto the pistols, the transition is very moot. If you
It's
will,
not as
you know?
it's not as significant.
Yeah, so the presentation is very similar to what you were used to with iron sights. It's just now the alignment equation has been removed from
Gotcha.
presenting the pistol. So ideally, in the world of mounting dots to pistols, we either want to specifically mill out the slide so that we can directly mount a micro dot onto a slide, or what the manufacturers have come out with now is they have interchangeable plate systems because various manufacturers have different footprints that they use for their dots. And essentially, so a company like Glock or Smith & Wesson or FN,
Springfield now.
Springfield, all those guys, they have to make pistols to accommodate whatever dot you might want. Well, they can't have individual SKUs for all of these. So what they did was made an interchangeable plate system.
Because much like, again, we talk about the fact there's no standard. I mean, admittedly, I think it'd be great if every optics company was making an open-top red dot sight that had the same bolt pattern, same recoil pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
And admittedly, we even have some within our own line that are different. But that's just because you look at the Razor has a different one from the Viper and Venom, but the Razor was made 5-6 years ago or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That's
and
part
the
of
evolution
part of that same
has
evolution.
happened so much. Yeah. So I mean, the gun companies, like you said, they had to get creative and make these plate systems. And so I interrupted there. Please feel free to carry on. But
Oh, well, I mean, they have an interface now. It's much like your car, right? I mean, they can't tell if you're going to have an Apple or an Android phone, but they make an interface that plugs in with either of them. Same kind of thing. They're making various plates for different optics. Different companies have gone about that different ways. Some of them are more conservative than others. Some of them is like, well, yeah, we have a plate mount system. Some of them have really gone deep into the weeds and they make it out of a very, high quality material, like the actual steel they make it out of is really high quality. And then how they attach it to the pistol, how many screws do they use? How big are the screws? How aggressive are the threads? Because all of that matters in how solidly this is all mounted to the slide. Whereas the first few that came out, it was a metal injection molded part that kind of flexed a little bit, and if you turn the screws too tight, it stripped out. And whereas now some of them have like tongue and groove, they like lock down, and there's 3 screws, and they're super solid. And then the aftermarket, if we start talking about, like we were talking about this agency gun before the show, they came out with a system that sits even lower than a milled gun does.
yeah, that thing is low. I don't even actually understand how they're not running into like
Right.
stuff like
Yeah.
extractor,
Yeah.
spring, and rod. I'm trying to come up with names, but
Yep. And then they give you options too,
rotator,
like
girder.
rotator, assembly, cuff.
and then you can have options too, like are the iron sights in front of the optic or behind the optic too?
Yeah.
Some of that's been a moving target, as people have developed technique wise too. So Say good, better, best. The best option is to mill out the slide directly for the optic that you want, or realistically, because we all know the technology is evolving, most companies, most customers are more in favor of these adaptable plate systems.
Yeah.
As the dots continue to evolve into the future, and so you're not committed into this one dot that maybe gets discontinued in 3 years, or you want to try some other one, you know.
That is true, yeah, because when you do a custom slide, it's a custom slide for that particular optic.
Yep, and that's actually how this gun came about. This is Atlas Gunworks Erebus, and one of the things we were initially talking about is I wanted this plate system on there because at the time no one was doing that in 2011s, but being involved with an optics company, I knew that at some point something's going to come out that's going to have a different footprint than this.
Naturally.
Wanted the $4,000 gun to be adaptable to that instead of being committed to the old style. Because I've seen that too in the retail world. I saw guns like this that were milled for dots that weren't made anymore. So
Right.
now you're deep into this gun with a sight that's discontinued.
Just becomes a cool historical piece.
Right. So to be adaptable to because the guns are forever. The guns will last a long time. But to have the plates that allow you to interface with new technology as it comes out, I would say that's the current state of the ideal way to mount a dot to a pistol. See, I almost did it too. But to mount a dot to a pistol is some sort of interchangeable plate system.
I've heard diamonds are forever, but I think guns are forever is way cooler.
And I think Adam really touches on an important process that's taken place. The adapter plate I put on my Glock 17 was a universal one. So every time I had to change the battery in the red dot, take it off, put the battery in, put it back on, you would have to re-zero it because the two hold-down screws wouldn't necessarily realign it so that it held zero. With the new plates, like with the Gen 5s and the MOS system, the pins in there will actually do a really nice job of when you change the battery, it will be very, very close to zero, if not exactly on zero, when you put it back on. So the evolution of that manufacturing and technology has really come a long way in making these dots even more reliable and usable than they were even a year ago.
Yep. And much like we talk about in rifle scopes, the torque that you use to apply to the screws, if we apply the same amount of torque each time, if we use a torque wrench and apply that 12 to 15 inch-pounds when we put it on there, it's going to return to zero. I would say within a degree of accuracy that the gun's capable. So if you have a gun that's capable of 2-inch groups, you're going to be within 2 inches of where you were.
Yeah.
But the torque that people put on, because most people, like, you know, even if they know that they have to be careful about ring torque on rifle scopes, they'll still like gorilla tighten these things on there with the red Loctite because they're worried that it's going to come loose.
Yeah. That's one thing I always get screwed up too because the torque values, I remember I was like, well, I know 15 to 18 inch-pounds on my ring screws, but what am I doing on this? So you said 12 to 15 is generally what we recommend?
Yep. So our general recommendation is 15 inch-pounds dry.
Okay.
Or 12 inch-pounds if you simply must use some sort of thread locker tool compound. And then the caveat on that, because most folks are like, well, why wouldn't I use Loctite? A screw coming loose or not coming loose is entirely due to surface contact of that thread. So how much surface contact between the screw and the thread and the receptor. Once you have good surface contact, it's not going to come loose. If we have a cheaper part or a more loose tolerance on what that thread is or what that screw is, that's where they start to come loose because they don't have surface contact, they don't have friction to hold them in there, and a thread locker compensates for that.
So now I finally actually know what thread locker does. I always thought I just always wondered. I just thought it was like glue, but no, it's just filling space.
Yeah, so we don't have good surface contact, so we squirt some glue in there. Essentially, is what,
and it just fills up space.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And there's
this whole
adhesive.
podcast
there's
is worth
adhesive
just
too.
that bit of knowledge.
Yes.
Good point. Great point. Now, we talk about the advancements in the technologies that gun companies and various different machining companies have used to make the interface with the dot and the slide better. And I remember that because I remember going back to the days when we first started doing some of this stuff with dots on pistols. You know, and it was after we'd come out with the Viper and the Venom, two options that are very good for being on a pistol. And Adam, you can, both of you actually, Mike and Adam, I'd like you to speak to which ones you'd recommend and stuff like that out of, because we have in front of me right now, I have a Razor red dot, a Viper red dot, and a Venom red dot. Those are just 3 within our own line. But which ones you'd recommend? But yeah, I remember people talking about, that was back when it seemed like everybody, again, in that Wild West scenario was just kind of like, yeah, you just kind of like mill a big enough square, throw in some little tiny dowel rod looking things that stick up and go into the proper recoil lug holes on these dots. And it's like, that's good.
Add thread locker.
Add thread, yeah.
Oh yeah, get that in there.
But then I remember a couple of conversations I started having with like Ryan Muckenern, who's been on the podcast a number of times, and some other folks, and some of the machinists who I feel really kind of spearheaded doing things the right way. And it's really important to have like good materials, really tight tolerances with these things, proper torque, and all that stuff. Because this optic does live a difficult life.
Oh yeah,
even the slide mounted ones, which you said maybe don't feel as much vibration as a frame mount or whatever, but they live a hard life. And when you kind of have these loose tolerances or sloppy tolerances, your chances for having issues really start to jack up. And so, yeah, we had this was kind of a little experiment. I remember these slides I have here are kind of fun because they reminisce back to the days when we were experimenting with cutting some slides just here at work on our machines.
Oh yes,
because we were trying to figure out like, well, maybe we should try and machine these and see what it works or see how it works, see what we can do. Sorry, folks, we're not going to start offering custom slide mounting options, but from Vortex. But
that's a
this
whole
was
can of worms.
Exactly. This was just to see kind of what worked and what didn't work. And it happens to be this Viper one here on this slide is a little bit looser than the Venom one. This Venom one is almost like a press fit. Like when I put the Venom in, if I just rest it on top of there, it won't go in. Like I have to actually like push it in on top of those recoil lugs. It could almost stay put without the screws going in. And then, you put the screws in and it really everything's just held in place much better. Micro vibrations are reduced significantly. And like you said, when there's tiny little pieces soldered together in there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd imagine something like that the performance could even, or with the looser tolerances, might even like deteriorate over time. Like maybe it starts out and it's kind of close, but just with that vibration and movement, like would that kind of like
right.
I'd have to guess that would be to happen.
Decline of performance.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely, especially on the early ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 rounds going through a handgun and the number of times that recoil hits that, over time things are going to get looser, and the tighter you can build it, the longer it's going to be able to hold together, I think.
Mm-hmm. So can you guys speak to, Mike, you do a lot of training. You train a ton of brand new shooters and as well as a ton of professional shooters too that you work with in the range. Adam, you work with a lot of male LEO guys in your line of work. When people are starting to talk about using these things, what's the rundown? If you had to give somebody, and we're going to use our red dots here. We avoid hard sells or anything like that on our podcast as much as possible. But for reference, I'm looking at a Razor, a Viper, and a Venom here. And some people either might be looking at these options or might be looking at other options. And there might be some telltale signs as to this dot might be better for this scenario. This dot might be better for another. We have some red dots like the Venom and the Razor, which the battery can be changed without removing the red dot from the slide. You got the Viper, which sits really low. What goes into picking the right red dot for your pistol?
For me, it was I liked the Venom because of how low it sat on the handgun, on the slide. And that allowed me, because in the police world, you have to have retention in your holster.
Or are you talking about the Viper?
The Viper, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So the Viper, sorry about that.
No worries.
So the Viper sat very nice and low for me, and it let me use a Safariland holster that was generic for red dots, but obviously the higher it sat, the less tolerance or the less ability there would be to get that back in quickly or get it out quickly. And so the Viper worked great for me, and that's what made me choose it. I'm very happy with the eye relief on that and how much of the red dot I could see. I've had other shooters that I've worked with that are new to red dots, and I'll put these side by side with each other and let them shoot all of them. They tend to like the kind of wider eye relief as opposed to what the Viper has. They're like, oh, I can find the red dot easier with that.
Oh, so with the Venom, like it has a lower profile hood around the glass on
Yes.
the Venom, so they find that to be a little bit more natural, a little bit less like they feel like they're looking through aluminum, and more just kind of like it's
Yep.
floating there.
And I think it's a little bit wider in the area that's reflective for that red dot, so they're able to pick that up more easily as well. So they kind of like how that felt, and it's like whatever works for each person is the right way to go with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, you kind of touched on something there that I was going to ask about. If a person hasn't had a dot on their pistol and they go to that, are there some kind of special holster considerations that they're going to have to think about, or will their original holster likely work or not work?
On the holster side, especially with the modern way that most of these dots are getting mounted for like concealed carry and things like that, for the most part, most of your popular like Kydex and leather holsters, as long as the front part of it is cut below the breech face of the pistol, you're pretty much going to clear whatever dot you have. So especially on the Kydex world, even if it's an option, like you need to select for a dot cut, what they're doing is going and then they're just cutting that piece out. So if it's cut below the breech face, which a lot of holsters are anyway, then you're ready for a red dot. If we're talking about open top holsters, where it gets tricky is in LE, where they have to have retention holsters. They need to make a mechanism that somehow comes over the top of this.
Okay,
Oh yeah, I've
gotcha.
seen some of those.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those holsters are either locking into the trigger guard here somewhere, or they have some sort of hood system. And when they have the hood on there, it needs to, on the draw, it needs to flop out of the way so that you can have clearance for the red dot to come out. But I would say by and large on the concealed carry market, most of the companies are already accommodating for dots. It's harder on the duty side because they're actually trying to lock it in there and still be able to get it out fast. So Safariland kind of owns the market there right now. But Blade Tech and G Code and a few others have options as well. But that's the thing on the LE side is making this retention system that gets out of the way, and then so it also it clears anything that's on the side. Like on ours, we have the buttons on the side. So that's the main thing on holster considerations.
Yeah.
And from a LE standpoint, the hood that Adam was referring to, it's not only for retention, but it also protects the optic itself from the environment. So if you're in the rain or snow or you're laying in mud, the hood helps to keep the glass clean so that when you do have to draw it out, it's going to be clean and available for you.
That's a good point.
So those things really play into it, and Adam touched on it. Safariland kind of owns the LE market right now with the holster that they offer to be able to use on duty with a red dot.
Yeah, speaking of that too, like you said, these are open top red dots, and they are waterproof in their functionality, but they're not necessarily like water, dust, dirt proof in the fact that there's an emitter down there. And again, like we said, we're trying to get a reflection. And if you're blocking the thing that you're trying to reflect, if a bunch of dirt and crud gets stuffed down in there, it's not going to, the shining light won't make it to the glass to reflect your eye. So it'll probably still be shining underneath all that crap.
Well, and I think a lot of those are legitimate concerns. A lot of them are overstated.
Do you think?
I
do.
agree.
I do. And because we all work for an optics company, I'm going to defer to a third-party source, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. He's done an entire video series on all this where he gets them foggy. He blocks them in various different ways to show you that they're still usable. But yeah, so yes, we can get water on the front window. Its effect on the dot is much overstated.
Okay.
Any obstruction we have on the front of the lens, all the dirt that comes out of the ejection port, anything on the front of the lens isn't
no big deal.
No big deal. In fact, fun game for those of you who have these at home to play. If you get the front of your window dirty, because if you're target focused and we can talk about this later because it's probably something we should get to, but if you're target focused, looking through the dot, your window will look clean. But then all of a sudden, if you shift your focus to actually look at the glass, you can see all the dirt magically appears.
Oh, it's just like if you're looking at your window at home.
Exactly.
If you shift your focus to it's kind of weird when you do it because you're like,
yeah, you would be surprised how dirty this front window can get and you not even notice it. Never mind be obstructed enough that you can't use it. And if it is obstructed to the point you can't use it, you can still use the occluded eye mind bending technique that was popular from the Trigicon days.
I'm sorry, what?
So,
thank you, Jim.
So yes, back in the Trigicani times when people had their ACOGs, and they had a fixed 4-power scope, right?
Okay,
on their service rifles. What they did to shoot up close is they looked really hard at it, but they were actually they were focusing on the eye that was not looking through the optic.
So the 1XI.
Right. So your mind will actually take the reticle and project it through your other eye. It'll put the two images together. So even if this emitter or this optic is completely blocked, but you have the red dot, your mind can put where the dot is together with the other eye that can see past it, and it will project onto. You'll be able to shoot with it. So, like when we take tactical shooting courses and things like that, like I took an instructor course from Sage Dynamics. One of the things they do is they have you put a piece of masking tape on the front of your optic, and then present it and look through it. So you're looking really hard at you're focusing on the target, and your mind is taking the image of the dot and projecting it onto the target, and you can still shoot accurately that way.
Mind bending.
Literally using the force.
Literally.
Quite actually.
One of the things also kind of playing off of that is if that emitter quits, you've got a ghost ring there with the red dot frame. And so if you're up close and that's not working, you still put whatever your target is in the center of that ghost ring, and you're still going to be able to hit your target. So if you don't have irons, the red dot goes down, you still have that ghost ring from the red dot itself to be able to use as a way to aim and be able to accurately hit.
Yeah. Sounds like something I made up, but I actually got lazy about changing my batteries. I had dots go out in the middle of stages. I've shot entire stages with the red dot turned off.
Just using the aluminum hood.
Just using the aluminum hood, like plate racks and everything.
I kind of remember there was a dot there.
I swear it's true. But
wow.
I mean, is it almost just like a large peep sight?
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly
like
what
that.
it is. Mm-hmm. And lots of shotguns, people are using ghost rings on those, and it's the exact same principle.
Huh. Interesting. Adam, I know you like the Viper a lot, right?
I do, yeah. So we're going to backtrack to your original question on which of these three. I wasn't at Vortex at the time, so I kind of had like the outside the circle view of this. But so when these micro dot products came to market, they were carbine optics. Us and our competitors as well.
Originally designed.
They were developed as carbine optics. Someone got the idea one day, like, aha, I can put this on a pistol. And that's when like the cascade of, oh my God, there's all these kinds of things we need to make red dots be able to do now. So the Razor is the product that we initially introduced into micro dots, and then subsequently the Viper and the Venom were released as an evolution of that technology. And they were released on the same year, if I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, same time, same year, yeah.
Yep. And
the only thing, someone's gonna bite me in the butt for that, because the Viper, I remember we were gonna come out with it. The Venom came out first. We announced both of them, but the Viper had a delay. For a couple of months because we had to work on one last thing with it.
Because I remember looking at the catalog, because I read the catalog like the Bible, and on that product page, the Viper was mounted on a pistol and the Venom was mounted on a shotgun.
That's right.
So I always thought of them in that term, like you can cross them up, but Venom was kind of intended still to be a long gun optic. Viper was the most optimized for pistol use.
Yep.
In my mind. And now as time's gone on and we've had a lot more experience, a lot more exposure to customers, I've been solidified in that. So Razor has the biggest window. So people who need the big window, you'll see it's still really popular on the USPSA and IPSC style guns like this one that we have here. It has a Razor on it.
Okay.
Because they want that big window.
Sure enough.
That's a bit of customer perception, but that's the one with the biggest window.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
So from there, I recommend across the board, Viper is the one I always prefer on pistols because it sits the lowest and it has the most robust housing. The housing itself is one piece of aluminum, and you'll see in the framework on it, it's got this triangular profile to it, so somewhat of a reinforcement for when guys do they do the racking and all those kinds of manipulative things with the pistols. Like if they're using it to manipulate the slide, it's a lot stronger housing to take all that abuse that these are typically going to get.
Okay.
Whereas the Venom is made out of a 2-piece housing. It's a bit more thin, which, like Mike said, gives you that lower profile, kind of that.
Very, yes, almost as though the aluminum housing disappears.
Yeah, kind of like the Razor 1-6. It's so known for that really thin signature. So I like it because it's the strongest housing and it sits the lowest. Most of the time when I sell Venoms to people, because I am a salesman, so when I sell people Venoms, it's usually because they have an objection to the Viper.
The battery mounts on the bottom.
Yeah, battery mounts on the bottom. Okay, get a Venom. I don't like the lock screws in the back. Okay, get a Venom. I want it to auto dim.
Yeah.
Okay, get a Venom.
Yeah.
But usually it's some sort of objection. It's usually the battery on the bottom, or the lock screws in the back. They don't like those particular features of the Viper. Those people tend to be Venom
When you
people.
do lock those screws, you unlock them, you zero the Viper, and then you have to take it off usually to then lock the screws and put it back on. When you take the Viper off and on, does it generally return? We talked about this a little bit before. Does it generally return to zero? And is
It
that
does.
mostly up to the quality of the mounting system that you have and consistent torque specs?
Yep. And when I was shooting customer dots a lot in customer care, I usually got them zeroed in 1 or 2 tries.
Okay.
So usually it's not this big process of on and off and on and off. You do have to take it on and off if you have an iron sight mounted in the back, like in the traditional configuration. But then again, we get to the iron sight mounted in front configuration too, would address that as well. And then some departments on the agency side, they like that it has locking screws and they like that the iron sight's in the way because they don't want their officers messing with them.
Oh, hey,
So
this thing works. Just trust us. Take it.
Well, they zero them at qual day, so everything's zeroed, and then they go out on the street, and they know that unless they go through all the effort of taking it off, they're not going to mess with their zero. So some departments like that, and just because we're on the topic, this comes up a lot too. The lock screws anchor the emitter, the LED emitter itself, in place. They do not lock the lock screws.
What?
So when the Razor, the Razor has a lock screw too. When the Razor and the Viper have the lock screws engaged, you can still turn the adjustment screw for elevation and windage. It's really just binding up that whole mechanism there. It's not going to actually move.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So a lot of people say, "Well, my lock screws don't work, or my optic doesn't work because I can turn the screws and it's not moving." They haven't unlocked the lock screws in the back. So the lock screws need to be unlocked before you make an adjustment, and they do not actually lock the adjustment screws in place.
Spoken like a true person that used to be in customer sales.
I've had
consumers. Shoot, what am I trying to say?
I did
Customer
both.
care. Thank you.
I did tours in both departments.
That you did.
But yes, that's a common call we get a lot. So but back to your original question, I always recommend the Viper unless they have an objection or they really like one of the key features of the other 2 products.
Noted. What kind of things do you tell somebody? Like what? I'm trying to think if we've gotten into this enough yet, or if there's anything else as far as considerations needed when actually shooting with a red dot. Like what kind of just necessary things need to go through your head? Like, is it pretty thoughtless, or are there things that you should be considering?
I think people overthink it, and I think a lot of the challenges and a lot of the misconceptions about red dot use come from thinking about red dots like people think about iron sights, even though they're completely different.
Yeah.
So kind of that perception that you touched on, like, well, I need to line something up, right?
Right.
You know, it's like, well, no, you don't. You just need to be behind it. So a lot of this, like a really common one is like I index my front sight as I'm bringing the pistol up, and that helps me find the dot. Well, if you're having problems finding the dot, it's because you have a problem with your grip. There's like inconsistencies in the draw and the grip. They don't want to address that because I've been shooting for years. That can't be it. It's got to be this new thing that I put on my gun, right? So a lot of that comes from trying to shoot the dot like an iron sight. They're trying to apply iron sight.
Yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Mentality.
Yes. iron sight mentality to a red dot. Whereas basically the advantage, what's going to make the iron sight obsolete is think of all the time, from a department standpoint, think of all the time they have to spend teaching people to look at the front sight, and all the time they have to spend teaching people how to line up front sight to rear sight. And then we compound it with your mind actually doesn't work that way.
Right.
You can't look at and focus on 3 things at one time. You have
Target,
to pick
front
one.
sight, rear sight. Yeah.
Right. And
And
that's
the
why.
threat.
Yeah. So that's where that front sight came from, because you have to decide. And one of them is, so what they arrived at was the lesser of 3 evils was to look at the front sight, and you'd probably be able to see the target okay, and they would probably be in the rear notch. Well, all of that goes away. Now we just need to present the handgun in front of our face, and you'll see the dot, and if you see the dot, it's lined up. So we don't have an alignment issue anymore. And it's much more intuitive because it's built around the way your mind works. Your mind can be 100% focused on the thing it's trying to put a hole in,
Right.
and the dot it magically appears there.
Yeah.
Air quotes.
So, Mike, do you then teach people primarily, and Adam, do you do this to focus on the target and have the dot just be there in front of the target?
That's exactly the way it's taught with a red dot. The beauty is you've got one focal plane with a red dot, so you're looking at the target, and you don't even think about shifting back and forth like you do with irons. It's just I'm looking at the target, the red dot's there, and the way our eyes work, everything lines up in that one focal plane. So it's much cleaner for people. It makes it easier, like for recruits, to learn how to shoot, because once they get that presentation down to where the red dot is up there every time, it's very simple for them to work that.
Well, I think, in a situation like that, too, I mean, you're making some pretty big decisions and some tough calls, and to be able to focus on, like you said, if you're in a law enforcement scenario where you have to pull out your pistol,
right?
Like being able to focus on the threat, or maybe turns out to not be a threat, but to be focusing on that and not your front sight.
Yeah.
It simplifies it. And
It
the other
does.
part is doing entries. So if you're at the front of a stack of officers and you're going into a room or a building, you've got your ballistic shield up, you've got your gun over top of that. And when you're doing that, it can be in a dark area. You may have a light on, your pistol that's turned on. I'm trying to scan the room at the front of this stack, looking for any threats, and think about having iron sights lined up. That's a lot going on, and if it's a dim room, you may not have a really good view of your front and rear sights.
Oh, sure.
But with that red dot up there, because you're working at an awkward angle when you've got the shield up, with that red dot up there, all I need to do is see that red dot, and I've got both eyes open. I can scan much easier. So from my experience, when I did room entries with a shield at the front of the stack, I liked having that red dot because there was one less thing for me to have to shift back and forth on my focus with.
Yeah, that's pretty slick. Now, did you find or have you found that teaching new people to shooting with a red dot on a pistol is easier than teaching people who've been doing it for a long time?
That's a good question.
That's a great question. The answer is yes, it's easier to teach. In my experience, it's easier to teach people that have not shot before to use a red dot. When people come in and they've been using irons for a long time, invariably they go to that front iron sight as they're doing the presentation, and then they start searching for the red dot. A lot of times they don't bring the front of the pistol down far enough that they can actually see the red dot in the window. When you're teaching somebody that's brand new to it, all you do is have them get that presentation down, and if they're not looking for the front sight, they come to it much cleaner getting that red dot up on target.
New manufacturing is always easier than recycling.
Yes. Well played.
Yes.
The fewer bad habits to break, the better.
Yes.
Or I guess I shouldn't call using irons a bad habit, but it's just
One of the things,
I think it's a very fair statement, Jim.
going back to the situational awareness thing too, like one of the things that doesn't get talked about a lot, but I noticed was with a red dot, you have a red dot presented generally in the middle of a screen. What you don't realize with iron sights is how much of your target the iron sights actually cover up.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Because I was a late adopter to, well, I guess I'm not a late adopter, but I was not an early adopter of red dot sights for competition, and that was one of the first things I noticed was like, man, I can see so much more now.
Yeah.
Because the iron sights always covered up half the target. So when we talk about situational awareness and things like that for law enforcement officers, like one of the key things is like, very rarely is a police shooting going to be like they do on the range, right? With the guy with the gun, like standing squared up to you, pointing the gun at you, and you're going to shoot him.
Yeah.
But what I tell people is if you were in that situation, you can see the guy's hands and have the dot on his chest.
Right.
Whereas if you had a iron sight picture, you can't see what his hands are doing. And in the LE world, the hands are everything because the hands are what hurts you.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
The other thing with the red dot, some folks have asked me, well, if you're running outdoors and you have to go inside, what about the illumination? Is that going to be too much as you move from a sunny daytime environment to a more dimly lit interior of a building? I never had a problem with that. The red dot blossoms some because it's going to be lighter compared to the ambient or brighter compared to the ambient light. But you still have such a field of view with that even with it blossomed a little bit, it never caused me any problems moving from outdoor sunny into the interior of a room. So for me, that was a non-issue to have that kind of thing happen. It was just like, it's a little bit brighter and it's maybe starred a bit, but I still see perfectly well through all of that.
Yeah. Speaking of dim light, I got to go down to the range one time and shoot with you guys under night vision with red dots on pistols. That was crazy. That was super cool, actually. We were using the Vipers, and we turned them down all the way. And you don't see anything through your nods except that nice little bright light. And then, of course, you're using an IR illuminator, too, so you're seeing the target. But that was wild.
Well, that's one of the things you actually bring something up. When you look at any gun in a lighted situation, you invariably focus on parts of the gun as you're bringing that dot up. You see the slide, you see the frame, the frame around the dot itself for the sight. When you're under nods, all you see is that red or see that green dot float up in front of you.
Yeah, it's green.
You have no distractions from anything. It's actually, I have found, easier to come up and be less distracted under night vision than it is with regular vision when you're shooting a night vision compatible red dot.
Yeah. I mean, that literally becomes put the dot on the thing and pull the thing because there is nothing else that you can see.
That's
it's just all I have is the dot. So, okay. that was pretty cool. What do you think? Mark, you got any other questions to
I was going to bring up dot size.
Oh, yeah, because you talked about covering up target.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, sometimes people look at the Viper and they go, 6 MOA.
Yeah.
That is huge.
Or you got the Venom where you've got the option of a 3 or a 6, right?
Yeah.
So maybe speak to that a little bit.
I forget what the measurement was. I knew it at one time, but basically a 6 MOA dot is smaller than the thinnest blade front sight you've ever seen in your life. So people who are worried about the dot size, like, because that's the thing, they're like, man, 6 MOA, that's way too crude of a dot.
Bro.
I need iron sights, And it's like that's still smaller than the smallest thing you could have possibly bought in the iron sighted world. As far as what dot size to pick, because we have, we can choose now. I would say it's kind of a sliding scale. Again, 6 MOA is still, it's pretty much the size that is precise enough for pistol shooting, but there are smaller size dots that will allow you to be point accurate or more accurate, to some degree. But what you have to keep in mind with dot size is as the dot gets smaller, it's going to starburst more on the window. So generally speaking,
As the dot gets smaller?
Yeah, as the dot gets smaller because they have to turn up the intensity to see it.
Oh, because it's a tiny little faint thing. So you got okay, I get it.
Yeah, so generally speaking,
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
It's gonna start because every time light hits a medium, it a certain percentage of it refracts in an undesirable direction, and that's what we see as a starburst. So generally speaking, the larger a dot is, the cleaner it is going to look. Because a lot of people we can talk about that too. A lot of people want this really clear, clean, sharp, circular dot. And generally speaking, the bigger the dot is, the more it's going to look like that for you.
Yeah, the Viper looks super clean with a 6 MOA dot, and it's because, and I don't have to have it very bright to see it.
Right, yeah.
And that probably helps tremendously. A lot of people, I think they have an astigmatism, and they may have a slight astigmatism. But I think a lot of people think that they do, because I see people all the time. Oh, I have this terrible astigmatism. You're right. It's too high. Too high.
Yeah.
It's too bright.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
You jacked it to the max.
Well, and the other thing too, if we want to touch on customer care pet peeves, like even if you have
As
an
long as we're
astigmatism-
venting.
Yeah, well, yeah.
even if you have an astigmatism, the dot is still a consistent size and it's still in a consistent orientation. So it still works as an aiming device for you. A lot of people are like, well, it doesn't look like a dot for me, so I can't use a red dot.
Unusable.
Not true. It's just going to be a different shape for you. It's not going to be a circle.
And I have an astigmatism, and that is exactly true. It may not be exactly round, but it's very consistent,
Yeah.
and I can hit the target.
Yeah. So common misconception there too. But generally, dot size, the bigger they are, the cleaner they look.
Good call.
Is kind of how.
Yeah.
I'm glad we mentioned that.
Yeah.
Nice
now,
work, Mark.
But some guys in the instructor world, they've gone to, well, we like the smaller dots now. So I tend to arrive at 6. I like 6.
Yeah.
I've
6
played-
inches
played-
at 100 yards, roughly.
Yeah.
Still,
And I still the other
Bad
thing
guy
the
chest.
other thing too is I sight them in to for what will be called a 6 o'clock hold. So I actually sight them in so that the bullet impacts if the bottom radius of the bullet hole, if you will. If you picture the circle of what's going to be the hole in the target, I've tried to set it up so that the bottom radius of the bullet hole touches the top radius of the dot. So if you,
interesting. So why do you do that?
So if you're really
and at
trying
what
to
distance, can I ask?
15 yards.
Okay.
But if you're really trying to hit something precisely, instead of covering it up with the dot and trying to put the hole underneath what is the red ball, you can hold the ball or the dot in relation to something else more precisely. You stack it like a snowman. So
Okay.
when you stack the two circles like a snowman, you can tell, okay, well those two are straight on top of each other. Or no, it's off to the side a little bit more. Or, height-wise too, you can
Yeah.
you have more perception or a more precise perception of where the bullet's going to hit if you know it's going to hit at the top edge of the circle versus covering up a target and it's going to be under there somewhere.
Yeah. Good. Okay. I could see that being. Yeah.
And that's how when we talk about shooting on carbines, when we talk about shooting red dots out to 650 yards, that's how we did it. It wasn't that we no magic voodoo. It's we can precisely hold the dot in relation to something else in space.
Oh yeah.
So are you holding that dot, I guess, slightly lower than what you are trying to hit, or slightly
If you
higher?
If you simply must hit something quarter-sized with a 6 MOA dot at 15 yards, I'm going to hold the dot underneath the quarter.
Okay.
But generally speaking, the things you shoot at pistols are pie plate size or larger. So then,
Right.
So then it's kind of irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much of an issue.
Oh, that's right. Okay, 6. Okay, that's where I get the 6 o'clock.
Yes, but when it's so on the clock, you're holding 6 o'clock or holding just below the thing you want to hit. If you simply must be very precise. Generally speaking, you don't have to be very precise with a pistol, but
Noted.
even the proverbial headshot, I mean, we're still talking about a difference of a quarter of an inch
Yeah.
at the most. So, still holding in the center for something like that.
You're not building a PRS gun, but it's going to be more precise and a little bit better at distance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
PRS pistol. That's actually a thing now, isn't it? They're incorporating.
make it a
It
thing.
is now.
incorporating pistols into PRS matches. I think.
Yeah. What are we doing on Thursday night?
Don't they call that 2-gun?
I think you just get get a Glock 34 and put a bipod on the bottom, extend the barrel out a little bit.
I'll see you there tomorrow.
Gen 2 razor on the top.
I want to see that.
Yeah.
Razor buys pizza.
All right. Well, what do you guys say we jump into some last calls? If we missed anything, feel free to throw it in your last call. Mike, last call is just bringing it in for a landing, which now every time I say to new guests, it's bringing it in for a landing. And for you actually really know how that goes. Mildly related or, you know what, heck, mildly unrelated if you want. But I'll kick it off since I forced the issue. Mark, I have 2.
Yes.
The last podcast I had a couple. This podcast I have a couple. I don't know. I guess I'm turning into you. First one I'm going to say is I was just speaking with somebody on a forum the other day, and they got their red dot and they put it on the pistol, and they immediately tried, because the pistol had iron sights on it too, they immediately thought that the best method to zero in their red dot would be that, okay, naturally, these iron sights should be lined up. They're zeroed, theoretically. So all I have to do is just match this red dot up with the iron sights, and bada bing, bada boom, the red dot's zeroed in. I didn't even have to shoot anything. I just did it in my house. Doesn't work. Very different. They're two extremely, completely, 100% different optical sighting systems, or just sighting systems. Zero your red dot as if the irons did not exist. So go to the range. You actually are going to have to put some rounds down range.
Yep.
Zero it just like you would with a rifle scope. You're going to attempt to get, on paper at first, so probably you're not shooting at any extreme distances, close range, get on paper, make your adjustments, adjust your point of impact. So if you're high to the right, adjust down and to the left in the, appropriate amounts necessary, and then check that. Continue shooting 3 to 5 round groups, make sure things are grouping properly. Then and only then, once you get it shooting where you want it to do, or where you want it to shoot, is it zeroed. It may not be exactly where your irons are lined up, but those are a very different sighting system. So treat them differently. You can't zero a red dot unless you're like some kind of magician in your house by just lining it up with the irons and just kind of not ever having to shoot around downrange. Doesn't happen. That person ran out of adjustment in the red dot. They couldn't adjust it anymore to get matched up with their irons. They got, they were having a real hard time. I said, hey, call us. We'll walk you through this. So anyways, that can happen.
At best, that's a crude adjustment to get started, but you're probably going to be several inches low.
Yeah, several. The other one that I was going to say was, if you have a range nearby where you can try out pistols with red dots on them, give it a shot. Try bringing out a pistol with iron sights and then shoot with a red dot and ignore the iron sights. Watch your group shrink tenfold. It's crazy. It happened to me. I'm a bad pistol shooter, but when I hold up a pistol with a red dot, it's crazy how much better my groups are. Okay.
That's not us making stuff up. The qual scores at departments who have integrated dots would scientifically reflect that.
Yes. Okay. Those are my two.
Awesome. All right, here's mine. Adam, you're a big competition shooter.
I like the 3-gun.
Adam likes the 3-gun.
No.
And also, if I remember correctly, hopefully I am, you said you were somewhat of a late adopter of the red dot, right? And I guess this is going to, dovetail.
Ooh.
Iron sight term there, Jim.
Oh, nice.
Right into what Jim was talking about. But I'd be curious to know, for you personally, I know Jim told his story, but what kind of improvement in speed and accuracy did you see? Because, you're coming from being an extremely experienced pistol shooter with irons to using a dot. And I guess kind of what was your experience between the two?
Oh, like if I had to put a number to it, I would say I feel like I improved 10%.
Okay.
Like if I were just to, quantify it somehow.
And I imagine that would probably be actually a much greater percent for maybe a less experienced
Yeah, because I
shooter.
was just going to say, when you're already very experienced, you're kind of splitting hairs when you're making differences
Yeah.
in your game.
But 10%
Exactly.
is still...
Yeah.
So like if I had when people, especially when I was in retail, they're like, "Well, is this gun going to make me a better shooter?" I'm like, "Well,
That's like
you'll
saying,
probably,
are these basketball shoes going to make me hit threes?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It's like I didn't look at the times and like do the math because I don't like math, so I didn't. But if I just feel like I'm 10% better. What it did for me though is it made there are no hard pistol shots anymore. Like before, when they would throw a target out at like 50 yards, or they would put a really small plate at 25 yards. It's like, oh man, that's gonna be a hard shot. Like I'm gonna shoot like half a magazine at that thing trying to knock it over. There are no hard pistol shots anymore. There's only bad trigger presses.
Okay.
Every single shot is the same. There's no alignment anymore. Because the thing that made that a hard shot was lining up the sights and then lining up the target. Where now you don't do that. Now it's just putting the dot on it and pressing the trigger without disturbing the pistol. So for me, what happened was there are no hard pistol shots anymore. Where I would try to shoot something with a shotgun or a rifle if I could, I'm not afraid to shoot anything and make contact with it with a pistol anymore. So that's really what what red dot shooting did for
Nice.
me on the pistol.
Cool.
Mark, did you pick up a strategy that I started a little bit ago but didn't tell anybody, which is to defer the last call by asking somebody else a question and then letting them talk and then being very content with my last call?
It was out of necessity, Jim.
It's a good strategy. Keep it up.
Is that kind of like
See, because now you're up again and you
Yeah.
get to keep talking.
is
and
that is that kind of like when you ask your
darn it.
significant other
I totally
where
made
they
you-
think you're taking them for dinner so that they tell you where they want to go?
Yes, exactly.
What's going on here, Jim? You're doing 2 last calls. I'm basically doing 0 last calls and forcing Adam into 2 last
Role
calls.
reversal. You know what happened? We switched our mics to the left side,
That is what happened.
flipped everything around.
I do have a last call question, actually. I got another question, and it actually has to do with the mics on the left. And this is more of a flying
You gonna ask
industry
the pilot?
standard. Yes, I want to ask.
The
I want to
cast
ask
is on the
Mike.
right.
Like, if you get into a plane, is it like 100% of the people you jump into a plane with? Does everybody have their headset on the left, or does it vary?
It varies.
does vary.
It does vary.
Okay,
All right. Feel better about
It does,
myself
yeah.
now.
because I thought, I switched because then I felt dumb.
I
because
thought we
knew-
were the only ones.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like your tone's a lot better though.
Okay.
Butterier tones.
I might just stick with it.
Yeah?
All right, Adam. Last call. This thing.
My last call,
What do you got that I didn't take from you?
For guys on the Mil side, a lot of times the guys trying to get these integrated into their departments are the gun guys, and they're running up against admin people who are not gun people, and they have all kinds of questions. So on the government sales side of things, if you are such a person trying to get red dots considered by your agency, one of the things we do is we are 100% willing to come out and visit you at no cost to you. I travel all over the country meeting with people, and we can do Q&A on the range. And we bring all the demo guns, and we have a good time. So if you are interested in that kind of thing, hit us up here at headquarters, and we would love to come out and see you.
It's a good
That's
one.
a solid last call.
I think that's a pretty sweet gig because you just get to shoot a lot.
No, but I get to watch a lot of shooting.
Oh, okay. All
I
right.
watch a lot of shooting.
Cool.
Mike,
So my
we're
last
gonna,
call.
we're gonna let the buttery tones bring us home.
Well, let me tell you what my last call is.
Whoa. Wow.
So my
a lot
last
of people
call
just
is
got real uncomfortable there, like, in a good way.
my last call is once you get used to shooting red dots, you will find it difficult to go back and shoot irons. Your eyes get so used to working in that one focal plane between the red dot and the target that to have to go back to shifting your focus actually makes it more difficult to use that. So red dots are a great tool like anything else that people use in the gun world. But once you get used to them, it's going to be a very valuable tool for people. There's my last call.
Nailed it.
I like it.
We're going to end on that. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. If you have any other questions about dots on pistols or pistols on dots for some reason, let us know. Hit us up on Instagram or in the comments on whatever you're listening on or watching on. And, yeah, appreciate it, everybody. And happy hunting and shooting out there. I got nothing else. I don't want to ruin Mike's awesome last call. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.